Yeah, I thought I'd just go on a little rant. That's some of the things that have been bugging me. One thing I've been thinking a lot about and just wondering. Well, it's probably a problem that doesn't have a solution, as in, well, there's probably no argument that I could make that I get people to realize the folly of their ways. It would be like, I think there are certain facets of thinking, certain concepts that either you are capable of understanding those on an intuitive level, or they are forever foreign to you. Maybe there's some people in between. But the thing that always irks me, or that's been irking me a lot lately, is this entire concept of morality. Right? Morality is just so obviously a method for people to feel good about themselves. Really. Now, many of the things that people refer to as moral have value in their own sake, But when people make the argument from morality, they're always full of shit. It's intellectual laziness. Right? Oh, it's the moral thing to do. Well, wait a minute. I can argue for why, why certain crimes should be illegal without saying that it's the moral thing to do. I can make appeals to the general safety of society as a whole, and by extension the person I'm talking to, by implementing a specific policy. For example, a policy that punishes theft will likely make you less vulnerable to theft. Don't have to appeal to morality there. Morality is just used by the person who doesn't understand the complicated economic nuance that makes the action that they're defending self-destructive. It's used as a way to justify one's actions without actually justifying them. To basically take an action that your opponents have demonstrated to be false or to be self-destructive to your own goals, right? And justify it in a way that ultimately hurts everybody. I can't stand hearing people make these moral appeals. For example, by focusing on semantics, when they should be focusing on where people where the actual fundamental disagreements are between them when they go into a debate. Right? Maybe I should be frustrated. Maybe I should be entertained when I see a liberal and a conservative debating abortion, for example. Maybe I should just stand back and laugh at them debating whether or not a fetus is a person, as if that's a coherent argument to have in the first place. Because obviously, words are just tools to communicate ideas, right? And they both have the same concept of what that thing inside that mother's womb is. right? I don't think there's any question about what it is conceptually. There's just this question about what you should call it. Of course, what you should call a thing doesn't tell you anything about what you should do or what the consequences of implementing this or that policy are. And that's what the debate should be about. That would be the only productive thing to have. Right? Not whether or not a fetus is a person. It doesn't matter whether you call it a person or not. If you broaden the definition of person to include fetuses, well then, by extension, you have to also broaden your heuristic of morally right thing, acceptable actions upon people to accommodate people that are fetuses. Does that make sense? I mean, where's the disagreement? Ultimately boils down to, typically, those against abortion have been told by some religious authority, which is some guy bullshitter pretending to talk on behalf of God, whom I don't believe in, obviously. Some bullshitter told them, "Oh yeah, it's a life. It's just it's the exact same thing as a person. So there you go." It's like I go and I see people debate or attempt to debate, and neither of them will have any sort of commitment to the debate towards better understanding. The whole point of a debate is to better understand other facets that you haven't considered, right? But nobody's interested in that. Everyone seems to be interested in just cheering for their team, waving the red flag or the blue flag, right? Which the reason they do that is because they presuppose their conclusions, obviously, right? If you happen to know that you're right about a particular issue, would it matter whether you used logically valid arguments, or would it just matter whether you used effective ones? Well, if somehow you could know the conclusion is true, if you somehow could know that conclusion with complete certainty, which you can't, right? Then of course, use the most effective means of persuading you that you're right. But people don't have the humility to consider that they might be wrong, right? You know, if you consider that you might be wrong, right? Don't you think the other side, my side, might think the same thing? We're people. We think like people. Other people think like us. I think like other people, generally. Right? Logic is universal. Commit yourself to logic. Right? Make sure the other side is committed to logic. If you're both committed to logic, then you're going to take the same actions. You're going to be both persuaded by logic. Right? And if you're both persuadable by... You want your other side to be persuadable by logic, right? So you got to be too. It's the It's kind of a paradoxical prisoner's dilemma. You have to have a little bit of faith that the other person is committed to logic. Well, maybe you don't have to have faith. I think before any debate, I don't know, both sides should have to recite the Litany of Tarski. Look that one up, the Litany of Tarski. Anyway, that's probably long enough. I've gone on too long.